One jagged bolt of lightning split the sky as Jack Miller fumbled with the gas pump. The world around him drowned in sheets of rain so fierce it felt like knives. His heart lurched when he saw movement in the storm's eye, a tiny figure trembling on the curb, soaked to the bone, too small to belong to the night. Without a second thought, Jack slammed the pump shut, sprinted through the flood, and scooped the child into his arms. The girl's frail weight pressed against his chest. Her teeth chattered against the roar of thunder. Ignoring the howl of wind and the sting of icy drops, Jack hoisted her into his truck, his old headlights slicing through the chaos. Tires skidded as he fired the engine and barreled into darkness, determined to save a life he'd only just discovered and unknowingly stepping into a world he was never meant to enter. If you've ever wondered how one simple act can change your life forever, hit like, drop a comment below, and subscribe now because Jack's journey is only just beginning. Jack Miller wiped grease from his hands as he turned the final lock on the gas station door, an action he'd repeated thousands of times without thought. The storm had come out of nowhere, fierce even by Crescent Bay standards. Normally a rain like this would keep everyone off the roads, but Jack's instincts told him there was more out there than empty highways. He glanced at the neon sign flickering closed before stepping into the tempest. His truck's windshield wipers groaned under the deluge as he eased onto the soaked asphalt. The path from the station to his small bungalow was usually a quiet 5-minute drive, but tonight it felt like an endless stretch of danger. Seawater-scented wind clawed at his jacket, and headlight reflections twisted in the downpour. Jack's son Lucas slept in the passenger seat, bundled tight in a hand-me-down hoodie, trusting his father without question. Jack stole a glance at him, soft chest rising and falling, unaware his dad was charging headlong into the storm. Then Jack saw her, a small silhouette beneath a battered street lamp. He slammed on the brakes, water spitting from the worn tires. In that instant, adrenaline flooded his veins. No father would ignore a child alone in a storm. Wincing at the screech of metal, Jack threw open the door and battled sheets of rain to reach the trembling girl. She stood ankle-deep in puddles, arms wrapped around herself, eyes hollow with abandonment. "Hey, over here!" Jack shouted, voice swallowed by thunder. The girl didn't move at first. He crouched, holding out his hands. Lightning flared, illuminating her soaked dress, clinging to tiny shoulders. Jack's chest tightened. He reached out and she hesitated, just a heartbeat before her frozen fingers closed around his. He swept her up her limbs, limp as a rag doll, and carried her back to the truck, scooping Lucas's jacket off the seat to wrap around her. The truck roared to life, and Jack maneuvered onto the road, headlights carving a path through the black water. The city lights of Crescent Bay glimmered dimly ahead, offering promise of warmth and safety. Lucas stirred, blinking sleep from his eyes. "Dad?" he mumbled. "Hey, buddy," Jack said without removing his eyes from the road. "I found someone who needs help." In the rearview mirror, he caught sight of the girl's pale face pressed against the makeshift blanket. Tiny tears streaked down her cheeks mixed with rainwater. Jack felt his jaw tighten. He hadn't planned on parenthood again, but here he was with 2 children who needed him. At home, the scent of cinnamon and coffee greeted Jack as he kicked off his soaked boots and guided Lucas inside. Their bungalow was modest creaking floorboards, threadbare rug, a faded photograph of Jack's late wife on the mantel. Tonight, it would shelter 3. Jack laid the girl on the living room couch, covering her with every blanket he could find. Lucas hovered, eyes wide with concern. "Dad," Lucas whispered. "Who is she?" Jack exhaled, pulling off his rain-drenched jacket. "I don't know yet, kiddo, but we're going to find out and keep her safe." He placed a hand on Lucas's shoulder, then knelt beside the couch. "You hungry?" he asked the girl. She blinked at him, green eyes glassy with fear. Jack fetched mugs of hot cocoa for the kids, and Lucas offered the girl a smile, as warm as the steam rising from his cup. Her fingers closed around the mug, though her hands trembled so violently, Jack thought the hot chocolate might spill. He grabbed gently for the cup, caution in his every move. "Drink slowly," he advised. "You've been through a lot." She nodded, but words wouldn't come. Jack looked to Lucas, who shrugged. 7-year-olds didn't always have answers either. Jack turned back to the girl, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. "We're your family now, okay? You don't have to be scared." The girl's eyes flickered upward, recognizing something in Jack's promise. He saw the first flicker of trust in her gaze. Tonight he had rescued 1 child. Come morning, he'd need to figure out how to protect her from whatever haunted her past. Jack's mind raced with questions. Who was she? Why had no one come looking, and how had this simple act of kindness already placed them all in danger? Yet in that quiet room with his son at his side and a stranger in his care, Jack felt the undeniable pull of purpose. The storm outside had driven her to him, and now he would face whatever storm lay ahead because no child, not even one he'd never met, would face the night alone. Jack eased the truck into the narrow driveway of his bungalow engine, ticking as it cooled. Lucas, still swaddled in his hoodie, yawned against the seatbelt, eyes heavy with sleep. In the back, Emily nestled under a borrowed coat, her tiny frame finally still, after hours of shivering and sobbing. Jack cut the engine and sat for a moment in the quiet hum of rain still drumming on the roof. He glanced in the rearview mirror at his son's fuzzy image and at the girl who'd changed everything in a single storm-soaked moment. "Come on, buddy," Jack murmured, unclipping Lucas's seatbelt. He scooped up Emily, careful not to disturb the thin warmth gathering beneath the layers he'd wrapped around her. The three of them moved inside Jack's boots, squeaking on the hallway floor, Lucas padding behind in bare feet. The first thing Lucas did was duck under the couch and emerge with a handful of blankets. He plopped them over Emily's legs and then climbed up to sit beside her. Emily's eyes fluttered open at the movement, her green gaze curious and wary. "Hi," Lucas said softly, brushing a damp curl from her forehead. "I'm Lucas. You can sit up if you want. Dad said you can have hot chocolate." Emily's lips twitched, no smile, but not a shake of the head either. Jack flipped on the kettle and rummaged through the cabinet until he found mugs decorated with cartoon cars. Steam curled from the spout as he poured boiling water over powdered cocoa mix. He added a splash of milk stirred until glossy and rich, then handed Lucas a mug and set another on the low coffee table in front of Emily. "Thank you," she whispered, voice scratchy from cold and fear. The cocoa warmed her fingers and she tilted the mug to her lips, taking a small, careful sip. "Slow down," Jack advised, kneeling beside her. "It's hot." Emily nodded, cheeks coloring as the warmth spread. Lucas watched her eyes drifting between Jack and the newcomer, as if trying to reconcile a girl from the storm with the one now safe on his couch. Jack wrapped an arm around Emily's shoulders and said, "I'm Jack. That's Lucas. You can call me Dad if you want. I know you must be tired." Emily looked between Jack and Lucas, uncertainty in her expression. Then she raised the mug again and took another sip, steadier this time. Jack took it as a good sign. He stood and crossed to the front hall. "Let's get you out of those wet clothes," he said, pulling an oversized t-shirt and sweatpants from a closet. Lucas hopped down and held the door as Jack gently guided Emily toward it. The bathroom light washed over her and she hesitated before stepping inside. Jack turned on the shower at a lukewarm temperature and handed her the clothes. "Just stand right here and let the water rinse the rain away," he said. Emily stepped in, shoulders hunched beneath the spray. Jack watched through the frosted glass, giving her space while ensuring she was okay. Steam fogged the mirror. Lucas peeked around the hallway corner wide-eyed, then scurried back to the living room to keep an eye on the mugs of cocoa. A few minutes later, Emily emerged, hair dripping but face calmer. Jack handed her a towel and helped her into the t-shirt. Her shivers had diminished and she tucked the soft fabric around herself. He led her back to the couch where Lucas had arranged a fortress of pillows. Emily sat in the middle, cocooned in blankets and warmth. Jack sank into a chair opposite. "Tell me your name," he urged, though he already knew it from the moment she whispered it. "Emily," she said, voice quiet but clear. "Emily," Jack repeated. "That's a beautiful name." Lucas grinned. "Welcome to Crescent Bay, Emily." For a moment, the three of them, father, son, and stranger, sat in companionable silence, warmed by cocoa and blankets. Jack used his phone to search the county sheriff's website. No missing child alerts, no reports matching Emily's description. He put the phone aside and exchanged a worried glance with Lucas. "Looks like no one's looking for you," Jack announced softly. Emily's eyes filled with tears again. She hugged her knees, and Lucas moved over to give her a reassuring nudge. "It'll be okay," Lucas said. "We'll help." Jack inhaled. "Right, we'll help." Dinner passed in comfortable chatter, mac and cheese for Lucas, peanut butter toast for Emily, while Jack ate leftovers from his fridge. Emily managed a few bites, watching Jack and Lucas move around the tiny kitchen, the clink of dishes, and the hum of the refrigerator normalizing the surreal. She told them her favorite color was green, the same shade as her eyes. She told Lucas she played hopscotch at school and he showed her a trick with his sock puppet. As the clock edged toward bedtime, Jack tugged Emily's hand. "Time to get some rest," he said, walking her to a spare bedroom that had once been Lucas's fortress of solitude before Jack converted it into an office. Lucas carried a stuffed rabbit and his favorite blanket, placing them next to Emily's pillow. Jack tucked them both in. Lucas slid under the covers, first pulling his blanket high. Then Emily climbed in, clutching the rabbit. Jack dimmed the light, and the room darkened except for the soft glow of a nightlight in the shape of a crescent moon. "Good night, Lucas," Jack whispered. His son mumbled back. Jack knelt beside Emily. "Good night, Emily. You're safe here, I promise." Emily closed her eyes. Her breathing evened, and within moments she slipped into sleep, the first peaceful rest she'd known in who knew how long. Jack rose, flipped off the switch, and slipped into the hallway. In the living room, the TV stayed off. The only light came from the kitchen where Lucas had left a mug of cocoa cooling on the counter. Jack wrapped an arm around his son's shoulders. "Night, buddy," Jack said. "You did good." Lucas yawned. "I like her, Dad." "Me too," Jack said, kissing the top of Lucas's head. "Me too." They retreated to Jack's bedroom, but sleep did not come easily. Jack lay beside Lucas's empty pillow, mind racing with questions. Who was Emily? Why had no one come looking for her? Was she truly alone? Outside, the storm had passed, leaving stillness in its wake. But inside Jack's heart, the wind still raged with worry and determination. He turned onto his side, facing the window, and whispered into the darkness, "We'll find out, Emily. We'll keep you safe." And for the first time since the storm began, Jack allowed himself a sliver of hope. Hope that this safe haven, this modest bungalow on the edge of Crescent Bay, could be more than shelter. It could be home. The first pale light of dawn had barely touched the horizon when Jack Miller parked his old Ford F-150 at the gas pump, the rumble of the engine mingling with Lucas's soft snores in the passenger seat. The coastal air was cool and still, the storm's fury replaced by an uneasy calm that clung to Crescent Bay like mist. Jack switched off the engine and glanced back at Emily curled under a faded beach towel on the back seat, her breathing slow and even. He slipped out the gravel crunching under his boots and moved around to raise the station's metal shutter. Inside, the fluorescent bulbs flickered on with a hum. Shelves lined with motor oil windshield washer fluid, and snacks stood bathed in harsh white light. The air smelled of gasoline and damp concrete, a familiar, reassuring scent. Jack flipped the switch on the little heater near the counter and poured himself a cup of coffee from the thermos he always kept on hand. The day had begun, but his mind was still on the girl in his back seat. Emily, 7 years old, drenched to the bone, found alone in last night's storm. Lucas, rubbing his eyes, sprang from the seat when Jack opened the door behind the counter. "Morning, Dad," he mumbled, stretching. He spotted Emily as she climbed out, blinking against the glare. "Morning," she echoed quietly. Jack handed her a mug of steaming cocoa. She cradled it between her palms, the warmth illuminating her pale cheeks. He nodded toward the back office. "Why don't you two go pick out some breakfast? I'll get things ready for customers." Lucas bounded to the snack aisle, returning with a box of cereal and 2 milk cartons. Emily followed, clutching the cereal box as if it were a lifeline. Jack watched as Lucas poured milk into 2 bowls, then hovered to make sure Emily could manage with the small carton. He smiled at their partnership, his son stepping up, sharing without being asked. Jack sipped his coffee and checked the station's daily log. No deliveries scheduled, no repairs to start until mid-morning. He debated whether to call Sheriff Dawson again, but the last check had turned up nothing. No missing child notices, no frantic parents reporting a violet-eyed girl matching Emily's description. He set the coffee down and stepped outside to fill the air with fresh salt breeze. He hadn't even finished pulling the hood release on his pickup when the ground tremored with a distant roar. 2 sleek black SUVs blazed down the street tires, spraying small pebbles across the asphalt. Jack's heart lurched. He watched them skid to a stop at the pump's door swinging open, men in dark jackets and sunglasses leaping out like predators. "Hey," Jack called, stepping forward with a casual air he didn't feel. "We're closed for repair," until one of the men, tall and broad-shouldered, cut him off. His voice was low and urgent. "Where is the girl, Miller?" Jack stiffened. Miller? He repeated slow. He was just a gas station attendant. How did they know his name? You got the wrong guy, friend. No girls here last night. The man's eyes narrowed beneath mirrored lenses. Don't kid us. He indicated one of the SUVs. We saw you pull in. She got out of your truck. Where is she now? Jack forced a shrug. You're mistaken. I was here closing up, then I went home. He gestured behind him at the shuttered station door. You can check the logs. No one came in or out after 9 p.m. last night. A second man, lean and grim-faced, stalked toward the station's convenience entrance, scanning the windows. He yanked at the door handle. It didn't budge. He stepped back, slapped the glass, then pointed at the side door. We'll check everywhere. He flipped open a comm device clipped to his belt. Sweep the back lot. She can't have gone far. Jack's pulse hammered in his ears. He took a breath and kept his tone steady. Be my guest. He stepped aside, arms spread, as the lean man and two others fanned out gloved hands, probing each corner of the pump area under the metal awning through the ice machine nook, even peering behind the dumpster. Inside, Lucas and Emily ate their cereal, oblivious to the drama outside. Lucas crunched thoughtfully, then leaned close to Emily. You okay? He whispered. Emily nodded, eyes flicking around the small station. Jack's pride in his son threatened to break into a smile, but the sight of armed men rifling through his workplace yanked him back to tension. He returned to the group outside as the tall man strode over, smacking a business card into Jack's chest. Stop playing dumb, the man said. You know where she is, call her in, or next time there won't be any questions. Jack looked at the card expecting a name or company logo, but it was as blank as a tombstone, just a direct line number. He pocketed the card, holding Jack's gaze. Tell your friend I'm right here, Jack replied softly. I'm not going anywhere until you tell me who you are and what you want with Emily. The tall man's expression twisted, irritation flaring. He turned on his heel, signaling the others. They retreated to their SUVs like wounded animals, doors slamming, engines revving. The lean man shot a glance back. This isn't over, Miller. Jack didn't respond. He watched until the SUVs disappeared around the bend, their taillights glowing like embers in the early morning gloom. He stood amid the puddles, reflecting the station lights, drenched boots, and cold coffee forgotten in his hand. Inside, Lucas hopped up. Dad, what was that? Jack swallowed the lump in his throat and forced a steady tone. Just some guys looking for something. Someone. They'll be back, but not today. He glanced at Emily's blank face and swallowed. I'll keep you safe, Emily. That's a promise. Lucas gave his hand a squeeze. We'll help, right? Dad? Jack met his son's unwavering blue eyes and nodded. Right. He tucked the mysterious business card into his pocket and turned to face his makeshift family. His son, protective and earnest. A little girl he barely knew, trusting them enough to sleep through the night. And himself, an ordinary man suddenly at the center of a violent hunt. Jack poured the last of his coffee into a mug and raised it. Breakfast on me, he said. Let's get ready for customers. Lucas and Emily exchanged glances and smiled. The station lights hummed the day's routine rhythms, resuming as if nothing had happened, but Jack knew better. Storms could be weathered, but the real danger had just arrived. And come hell or high water, he would stand between them and whoever was hunting Emily. In the stillness, after the SUV's departure, Jack Miller steeled himself for the fight to come. Jack didn't hesitate. The instant the last SUV's roar faded into the mist, he slammed the pump handle back into its holster, yanked the keys from the ignition, and ushered Lucas and Emily toward the Ford. Lucas's eyes were heavy with sleep, his hair mussed from the pillow he'd scooted off in the back seat. Emily clutched her beach towel like a lifeline, her small frame trembling in the chill pre-dawn air. Hop in, Jack, whispered, voice taut. He could feel the adrenaline tightening every muscle. Lucas slid behind the wheel. No, not that behind Emily, and Jack settled in beside him, flicking the lock switch as he did every time he felt danger in his gut. He fished the mysterious card from his pocket. The blank white rectangle with its single phone number felt like a challenge. Call this number, and the hunters would know exactly where to find them. Keep it secret, and maybe they could vanish into nowhere. He started the truck. The engine growled, startling Emily from her vigil. She looked up, eyes wide. Are we okay? Jack forced a smile. We're fine. We're going somewhere safe. His words came easily, but the promise tasted bitter. He guided the truck down the station's driveway, grappling with the weight of what lay ahead. He had no plan, no map, and no clue who wanted Emily or why. All he knew was that she was now his responsibility. Lucas sat on the right side of the back seat, leaning forward so he could peek around the headrest. "Where are we going, Dad?" he asked, voice thick with sleep and worry. Jack glanced at him in the rearview mirror. The streetlights carved shadows across Lucas's face, making his cheeks look pinched. "We're going to find a place where no one will look for us," he said. "We'll figure it out from there." Emily's small voice piped up from between them. "Will they come back for me?" Jack's throat constricted. "Not if we stay ahead of them." He pulled the truck onto the main road, tires hissing on wet asphalt. He aimed for the old two-lane highway that curled along the coastline, hoping the winding turns and empty stretches would buy them time. The sky was still the color of bruised steel, the horizon a thin slash of gray that promised sunrise. Water pooled in the truck bed, shining in the dim light. Jack wrestled the wheel through the first curve, eyes flicking to the mirrors every few seconds. No tail. For now. Lucas twisted in his seat to get a better view of Emily. "You okay?" he asked again, his 8-year-old concern echoing Jack's own. Emily nodded, clutching her towel tighter. "I'm cold," she whispered. Jack tapped the heater dial. "Turn it up. Blankets under your seat." He paused, taking a breath. "I'm sorry you got caught up in all this." Her head tilted so she could see him in the mirror. "It's not your fault," she said. "Thank you for saving me." His chest tightened. "I promise I'll keep you safe, Emily. No matter what." She didn't ask how. She didn't ask why. That small trust stung in his heart, reminding him why he couldn't let them down. The road unfurled ahead, smooth tarmac glistening from last night's rain, hugging the cliffs that plunged into the dark sea. Jack kept the speed moderate, ignoring the whispers in his mind urging him to gun it. He needed to think, needed to breathe. Dad Lucas's voice cut through the hum of the engine. "Can we stop for breakfast?" Jack's jaw ached from clenching it so hard. He met Lucas's eyes in the mirror. "Let's try to find a 24-hour diner," he said. "Sit tight." They passed a sign for a roadside cafe, its neon open, flickering feebly. Jack steered toward it, tires crunching on gravel as he pulled into the empty lot. The cafe's windows were opaque with steam. A single light glowed over the door. Jack killed the engine. Silence settled, thick tense. Emily's voice trembled. "What if they find us here?" Jack slid from the driver's seat and moved to her door. "Stay put, but keep that towel wrapped around you." He flicked the lock again, then strode around the front of the truck. He slid open the passenger door so quietly that Emily barely noticed. Lucas followed at his heels, eyes wide. Jack crouched by Emily. "You two good on your own for a few minutes. Don't answer the door." Lucas nodded, and Emily squeezed Jack's hand. He stood and walked toward the cafe's front door, each step measured. He reached the glass and peered in. The counter was empty, stools lined up like sentinels. There was an aroma of warm bread and coffee drifting out even before he cracked the door. He slipped inside, blinking against the bright fluorescent light. A bell tinkled overhead. Jack scanned the room. No customers, no staff. Coffee cups half full on the counter. He took a cautious step forward. "Hello?" he called, voice low but carrying. No answer. He glanced at the back door leading to the kitchen. A faint noise, metal clinking, echoed from inside. Jack's heart lurched. He took another step toward the kitchen entrance, then froze. On the counter by the cash register lay a half-eaten pie and a note hastily scribbled. "They're coming. Go. Now." He felt nauseated. Someone else had been here hiding, watching, warning them. He tucked the note into his pocket. A soft sound, a muffled cry, came from the back of the cafe. Jack eased past the clattering dishes and reached the kitchen door. He cracked it open to find the cook's area, empty pots and pans hanging on the wall, and a small pantry. The cry came from behind a curtain at the far end. Jack yanked it aside. A scrappy backpack lay on the floor, zippers open. On the shelf above, a roll of duct tape and a half-empty bottle of water. And then he saw it, a photo pinned to the wall. Emily's face smiling next to the same SUVs, underneath a scrawled date, yesterday's, and the words, "Get her." No mistakes. Jack's hands balled into fists. Someone was orchestrating this hunt. Someone who knew Emily, who wanted her back. He snapped his head toward the door. The diner was still empty, but the portal of clarity had opened. They couldn't linger. He backed out of the kitchen, slamming the curtain closed. His boot on the door frame nearly missed the lock. He turned to leave the diner, then paused, breath-catching. On the counter, someone had scrawled in ketchup beside the cash register. Trust no one. Jack felt hollow inside, but there was no time to dwell. He sprinted outside, vaulted into the driver's seat, and slammed the door. Josh Lucas climbed back in through the driver's window. Found something? Jack asked, voice tight. Lucas thrust the torn photo into Jack's face. They're looking for her, he said, voice flat. Dad. Why? Jack pocketed both notes and the photo. I don't know, he admitted, voice raw. But we're not waiting to find out. He shot Emily a reassuring look. She nodded, small and brave in the dim light. He turned the key. The engine roared, tires spun on the gravel, the lot rattled. Jack shot a glance in the rearview mirror. No tail, at least not yet. He punched the pedal, launching them back onto the highway. Lucas took Emily's hand. We're okay, he said more to himself than to her. Jack kept his eyes on the road. We will be, he replied. I promise you both, no matter who wants her, no matter why they'll have to go through me first. Emily squeezed Lucas's hand, then pressed her forehead against the cool glass of the side window. Jack's chest ached at her vulnerability. He eased the speed, letting the fog swirl around the headlights. He didn't know who was after Emily or what secrets she held. He only knew that to protect her and his son, he would run until his arms ached, until his lungs burned, until dawn broke for good, and gave them a chance to catch their breath. And even then, he would stand in front of them both, unwavering, because a stranger's life had become his cause, and he would not fail. Jack pulled the door of the roadside motel room shut with a soft click, his shoulder brushing against the worn wood. The room was bare except for two twin beds pushed together, a small nightstand with a flickering lamp, and a threadbare rug that felt thin under his boots. The fluorescent light above buzzed faintly, casting a pale glow on the faded wallpaper. He set his duffel bag on the floor and exhaled, finally allowing himself a moment to breathe. Lucas and Emily were perched on one of the bed's legs, swinging over the edge. On the nightstand sat a chipped ceramic mug filled with lukewarm coffee, steam lazily curling upward. Emily wrapped both hands around the mug, her small fingers dimpling the chipped glaze. Lucas nudged her gently. Drink it before it gets cold, he said in a hushed whisper. Emily nodded, her eyes fixed on Jack as he dropped onto a folding chair. He rubbed his temples, exhaustion nodding behind his eyes. All right, he said, voice raw. You kids stay here. I need to know more about you, Em. He used her nickname deliberately. They'd all taken risks tonight, and he needed to understand the stakes. Lucas slid off the bed and patted to Jack, concern flickering across his face. Dad, she said she'd tell us the truth. Jack met Lucas's gaze in the dim light. She did. I want to hear it. He turned to Emily, who took a long sip of coffee before setting it down. So much for lukewarm. She brushed a strand of damp hair from her forehead. Even in the thin motel light, Jack could see the way her green eyes held fear and something else, a glint of steel. Jack cleared his throat. Okay, Emily, you said your dad or your mom is someone important. He kept his tone gentle, careful not to sound accusing. Tell me. Emily's knuckles whitened around the mug. She drew in a breath. My mom is Isabella Hart. The words were quiet at first, as if she were testing their weight in the air. Jack leaned forward, brow furrowing. Isabella Hart. The CEO. Isabella Hart. Emily nodded, eyes trained on the floor. She's the head of Hart Industries, the tech empire global. She's worth billions. Jack's heart stuttered in his chest. He had heard the name in passing. Hart Industries was everywhere. Autonomous vehicles, AI research, cutting-edge robotics. The kind of company that made the headlines that draped its logo on stadiums and skyscrapers. But a CEO's daughter. A child who'd vanished without a trace. It felt surreal. He rubbed his jaw. So you're telling me that I've been playing babysitter to the daughter of one of the richest, most powerful people on the planet? His voice rose more incredulous than angry. Emily's lip trembled. I didn't tell you because
Because I was scared.
Her gaze lifted, fixing Jack with an intensity that belied her small frame. After the car crash, after they tried to kill us, I couldn't go back to the mansion. I didn't know who was safe anymore. And then I found you. Jack blinked, the pieces snapping into place, the black SUVs, the armed men demanding the girl, the cryptic note plastered to the cash register. This wasn't a random abduction. It was corporate warfare war being waged for control of Isabella Hart's innovations, and Emily was the ultimate bargaining chip. Lucas whispered, "They want her because if they control her, they control the company." His voice was small, but his realization was keen. Jack nodded slowly. That makes sense. His mind raced. Every phone call he had ignored, every U-turn he had made, he had thought it was just survival. But now the stakes were seismic. This wasn't just about a runaway child. It was about the future of Hart Industries itself. Samson Hart, Emily's grandfather, or maybe her father's board. Who the hell would go this far? Emily's voice quavered. I'm sorry, I lied. I didn't know who I could trust. Jack rose from the chair and crossed to the bed, crouching down so he was eye level with her. You did the right thing by coming here, he said firmly. By trusting us, you gave yourself a shot at safety. He glanced at Lucas, then back at Emily. But we need a plan now. We can't stay here. Emily set the mug beside her, her expression solemn. I know. She swallowed. Mom has resources, safe houses, private security, but I couldn't reach her after the crash. All I had was the burner phone, and then it died. I tried to get to the old summer cabin my mom's team built for emergencies, but I drove wrong, crashed, and blacked out. By the time I woke up in that hospital, her voice broke. Jack placed a hand gently on her shoulder. You're safe now. Emily nodded, but her eyes flickered to the window as if expecting armed men to shatter the glass and storm in. I'm scared, she admitted. If they find me, they'll use me to break her. They'll Jack cut her off. No one's getting you. Not now, not ever. He turned to Lucas. We need to head for that cabin. Do you know where it is? Lucas pulled up a small folded map from his jacket pocket one Jack had bought at a gas station earlier. He'd thought it was for emergencies. Now it felt prophetic. He handed it to Jack. It's 6 miles north off the state line road. If we cut through the forest, it'll be faster. Jack scanned the map, committed the route to memory. All right. He folded the map and tucked it into his back pocket. We move in 10 minutes. Rest up, eat something, get your strength. He looked at Emily, offering a small, reassuring smile. Coffee helps, but pancakes do wonders. Emily managed a wan smile, and Lucas slipped off the bed to find the room's lone coffee pot. Jack headed for the door, pausing at the threshold. He didn't need to say it, but the warning was in his eyes. Stay close. Stay quiet. Stay alive. The three of them filed out into the pale hallway, pulling the door shut behind them. Jack jiggled the deadbolt once, twice, then pocketed the key. He took a deep breath, steeling himself for what lay ahead, a patch of woods, a hidden cabin, and whatever dangers lurked in the underbrush. He glanced back at Emily, her small figure dwarfed by the harsh motel lights, and Lucas, his determined gaze shining bright. Jack exhaled, shoulders straightening. Let's go save the world, he said quietly. And with that, they slipped into the dawn, each step carrying them deeper into the fight for Emily Hart's life and the truth that would change them all. Jack Miller's front porch light cast a warm glow across the rain-dampened walkway as he ushered Emily and Lucas inside. The front door closed with a definitive thud behind them, sealing out the night's chill and their pursuers for the moment. Inside, Jack flicked on the overhead lamp, illuminating the living room in soft yellow. The room felt different now. The worn couch and rickety coffee table weren't just furniture, they were shields, bastions in this unfolding battle. Lucas dropped his backpack by the stairs and padded over to the kitchen. Can I get you anything? Em? He asked, voice gentle. Emily followed him, examination, growing more confident by the minute. Jack lingered in the entrance eyes, scanning the windows' locks, clicking shut one by one. Emily set her battered phone on the counter and took a shaky breath. Her shoulders were squared, face resolute. We need to talk, she said. Jack leaned against the doorway, arms crossed. I'm listening. Emily poured herself a glass of water, the liquid catching the kitchen light. It started months ago, she began, eyes flicking toward Lucas. At the annual board meeting for Hart Industries. I went as my mom's guest just to see the office. She swallowed, shoulders tense. That's when I noticed the whispers. Board members glancing at me, security cameras panning too long. Two executives cornered her in the hallway, talking in hushed tones about accelerating the transition and neutralizing the variable. Jack's brow furrowed. Variable. Emily nodded, her green eyes bright with unshed tears. That was me. They wanted the company without my mom. If she fell off the board anyhow, they'd lock in a takeover. I'm the only heir, the variable stopping their plan. Lucas peeked around the corner from the pantries. So they tried to eliminate you, Emily exhaled, voice soft. It wasn't a direct hit, at least not at first. They leaked rumors to the press, manipulated stock prices. My mom fought back, but it got worse. She set the glass down with a clink. Then I got that last message, we'll make her disappear. Tonight. Jack's jaw clenched. You ran when they tried. Emily's voice cracked. I left the gala early. I drove off in my mom's car into that storm. She rubbed her arms as if warding off ghosts. I thought I could lose them, but they must have had tracking on the car. She looked at Lucas. I panicked. I got lost. Then, the crash. Jack stepped forward, placing a steady hand on her shoulder. You did the right thing coming here. Emily offered a half smile. I know. I never imagined my mom's boardroom politics would end up in my backyard. She gestured at the modest bungalow. And I definitely didn't think I'd be hiding out in Crescent Bay. Lucas appeared at her side. This is home, he said quietly. You're safe here. Jack watched Lucas's earnest expression and felt a surge of protectiveness. Lucas is right, he said firmly. Nothing's getting past us now, not my son, not you. Emily nodded, eyes shining with gratitude. She took a breath, shifting to Jack. I need you to understand the scale of this. Hart Industries isn't just another tech company. My mom's created a self-driving AI system so powerful that military contracts and international partners are lining up. If those executives wrest control of it, they'll reshape global defense. Jack's pulse quickened. So this isn't just corporate greed, it's weapons-level tech. Emily swallowed. Exactly. And if the wrong people get their hands on it, they'll hold the world ransom. My mom has backups encrypted data scattered across safe servers, but if they get me... Her voice trailed into silence, the unspoken threat palpable. Jack absorbed the weight of her words. His cozy living room, the mismatched pillows on the couch, the framed photo of him and Lucas by the pier, all had transformed into a front line in a global war. He ran a hand through his hair. We need a plan. Emily straightened, steeling herself. First, we upgrade security here. Motion sensors, cameras, anything. Then I need to reach my mom. She'll move heaven and earth to protect me, but she can't if she doesn't know where I am and she's blocked from all my burner accounts. Jack nodded, already mapping steps in his head. I can rig up a mesh network to bounce your calls. No one can trace it. Lucy shuffled over with a pen and scrap of paper, sliding it to Jack. This is the blueprints from the station. If we bolt some of those solar floodlights up, we'll get 360-degree coverage. He looked at Jack expectantly. Jack glanced at the crude drawing. Good thinking, champ. He looked at Emily. We can do this tonight. Emily's lip quivered with relief. Thank you. Lucas grinned, then paused. Dad, what about the guns? Jack's face grew serious. I've got the license. We'll store them in the safe, but only I or you can touch them. We hope it doesn't come to that. Emily watched them assemble in quiet efficiency, their small living room humming with purpose. She realized then that Jack's home really had become a fortress, and that Lucas, her new little brother in arms, was as brave as any soldier. Minutes later, Jack installed a motion-activated lamp by the front window, while Lucas wired an old webcam to their laptop. Emily hovered over the rotor, flipping through settings. She plugged her phone into Jack's improvised power bank necklace next to her. Outside, the wind rattled the loose siding, a low warning. Inside, the air crackled with tension and resolve. Emily caught Jack's eye and offered a shaky smile. I'm sorry I dragged you into this. Jack dropped a screwdriver into a box and clapped her shoulder. You didn't drag anyone, Em. You asked for help. We're happy to give it. Lucas tightened a bolt on the camera mount. Anyone who messes with our family will wish they hadn't. Emily's green eyes glistened as she crouched to Lucas's level. Thank you, Lucas. You're amazing. Lucas straightened proudly and saluted her. Family sticks together. Jack cleared his throat. All right, the lights are up, cameras rolling. Now let's patch your calls through. Emily, you ready? Emily nodded and tapped the screen. Let's do it. Jack paused by the front window, scanning the dark street beyond the glare of their newly installed floodlight. The routers hummed, cameras panned, and the living room felt sealed, protected. But he knew that outside these walls, powerful men were plotting. Still, none of that mattered now. In this moment, a struggling single dad's home had become a linchpin in a battle that spanned boardrooms and battlefields. As Emily's encrypted call connected with her mother's secure line, Jack stood back and watched her face light up at the first pleasant voice she'd heard in days. Lucas sat beside her, offering a supportive grin. Jack exhaled, shoulders uncoiling for the first time in hours. They were ready. Tonight, Crescent Bay stood between Hart Industries and chaos, and Jack Miller was determined to hold the line. Jack Miller stepped off the elevator and into the hushed expanse of Hart Industries' top-floor boardroom, every sharp edge and polished surface a reminder he didn't belong here. The air smelled faintly of new leather and ambition so different from the diesel and oil he was used to. His sneakers whispered against the marble floor as he followed Isabella Hart's personal assistant, Mara, to the head of the gleaming oval table. Around him, a dozen well-tailored executives exchanged curious glances. Their crisp suits and engraved nameplates spoke of boardroom battles Jack could only imagine. Emily hovered behind him, clutching Isabella's old leather briefcase, proof that she too felt out of place. Jack gave her a reassuring nod. "You okay, kiddo?" he whispered. Emily's pale green eyes flicked up. "Ready," she said, voice barely above a whisper. Jack swallowed, then met the steely gaze of the chairwoman, Margot Sinclair, one of Hart's most formidable directors. Sinclair's eyes were cool, assessing. Behind her windows framed the city skyline, 1,000 stories of power stretching to the horizon. Jack braced himself. Mara stepped back, carefully closing the boardroom door with practiced gentleness. Margot Sinclair stood and offered Jack a single nod. "Mr. Miller, thank you for coming on such short notice. We've heard remarkable things about you." Jack shifted on his feet. "Just happy to help." His voice sounded too loud in the pristine room. He cleared his throat. "Emily's safe now. That's all I want." Margot inclined her head. "Understood. As you know, certain factions on the board have questioned how best to secure the company's future. The incident with your rescue of Emily shows exceptional loyalty and problem-solving under pressure, qualities we value. But strategy matters too. We need assurance that your unconventional methods align with our long-term goals." Jack's heart pounded. "My methods got her here alive, ma'am. That's my goal, protect the kid." He glanced at Emily. She stood straighter now, more confident. "I'm not a professional negotiator, but I know loyalty when I see it, and Emily's life is worth more than any stock option." A murmur rippled through the assembled executives, some skeptical, some nodding. Margot lifted a finger. "We appreciate your candor, Mr. Miller, but Hart Industries is on the brink of multi-billion-dollar deals. The board needs to know you can navigate corporate dangers as deftly as you did the highways and byways of Crescent Bay." Jack inhaled, then let it out steadily. "I've faced collapse before, lost. My wife struggled to keep my boy fed. I've learned that when you believe in someone, you don't just turn away when things get messy. You roll up your sleeves. You learn what you need to learn. I don't have a business degree, but I know how to fix problems, understanding engines, understanding people. I figure out what's broken, and I fix it." He noticed a few of the younger executives leaning forward, interest sparked by his sincerity. Margot Sinclair's expression remained inscrutable, but her next words were softer. "We value integrity as much as innovation, Mr. Miller, and your integrity is evident. However, in the heart of our headquarters, we operate on data forecasts, financial models. Will you be able to adapt?" Jack felt the weight of their expectations, but stood firm. "I adapted to single fatherhood in a storm, didn't I? I'll adapt here. Show me what I need to know, and I'll learn it. I've got a kid counting on me, and she's got a future worth fighting for." A senior director, Jonathan Reyes, cleared his throat. "What specific role do you envision? You've proven instinctual brilliance in crisis. But where do you see yourself within Hart Industries?" Jack thought of Lucas and Emily and of all the nights he'd spent in Greece and cold earning every dollar. I don't need a title. I just want a place where I can help keep Emily and everyone here safe. Whether that means working with your security team, joining a crisis response unit, or staying on call for whatever emergencies arise, I'll show up. Reyes exchanged glances with Margot. Security Advisory Crisis Management. Plausible. We do have a task force for critical incident response. You'd work with Colonel Freeman. He's military trained. He could use your practical expertise. Jack nodded. Colonel Freeman, ma'am, I'd be honored. I'll learn what I need about your systems. Just point me in the right direction. Margot stood again. Then we'll formalize the arrangement. Mr. Miller, welcome to Hart Industries. Your official title, Senior Emergency Response Liaison. Your responsibilities will begin immediately. Training starts tomorrow. Jack's chest tightened with relief and disbelief. Thank you, ma'am. Margot's lips curved into the smallest of smiles. Thank you, Mr. Miller, for doing what others wouldn't. This company rests on the edge of greatness and sometimes survival demands. Unconventional heroes. Lucas let out a small whoop behind Jack. Jack spun and half-hugged his son, then winked at Emily. She grinned, clutching Isabella's briefcase like a trophy. As they turned to leave, Margot's voice stopped them. One more thing. Jack and Emily faced her again. Lucas, eyes wide, clutched Jack's hand. Margot said, We're also imposing a moratorium on boardroom votes regarding succession until Emily herself can contribute. No one moves against the heir while she's under our protection. Jack's eyebrows shot up. Emily's jaw dropped. Margot added, Family is our greatest asset, and employees are our extended family. We protect both fiercely. Jack felt a surge of pride and responsibility he hadn't anticipated. Outside the boardroom, the city glittered below them, a landscape of possibility and peril. But inside, Jack Miller had carved himself a seat at a table he had never dreamed of, even as he stayed true to the principles that defined him. He squeezed Emily's hand. Looks like we're more than safe. Emily's smile was radiant. Looks like it. Lucas bounded ahead, eager to share the news. Jack lingered to exchange a respectful nod with Margot Sinclair, gratitude and a silent promise to prove himself worthy. As their footsteps faded down the corridor, Jack realized that in a world of high-stakes corporate power plays, it was his grit, his loyalty, and his unwavering belief in family that had earned him respect. In the gleaming boardroom of Hart Industries, grease-stained jeans and heartfelt honesty had outshone polished resumes, and for Jack Miller, that was the greatest triumph of all. Jack Miller stepped into Hart Industries' state-of-the-art engineering lab and felt momentarily out of his depth. Around him, engineers in crisp lab coats hunched over consoles displaying 3D renderings of the new prototype chassis. The room hummed with precision machinery, robotic arms, assembling miniature models, and the soft hiss of hydraulic presses testing metal components. He carried his grease-stained notebook, now nearly as famous here as any schematic, and walked alongside Colonel Freeman, who served as his formal liaison to this world of high-tech innovation. Here we are, Freeman said, his voice low. This is where the magic happens. Jack nodded politely, scanning the gleaming equipment. He'd never imagined he'd find himself in a place like this, let alone have a seat at the design review table. Yet here he was invited to provide his hands-on perspective to bridge the gap between corporate theory and real-world mechanics. Freeman led him to a cluster of engineers gathered around a full-scale model of the prototype chassis, a sleek, lightweight frame intended to revolutionize automotive safety and performance. One of the senior engineers, Dr. Priya Raghavan, turned to greet him. Her expression was courteous but guarded. Mr. Miller, welcome, she said. We've heard about your contributions so far. Today we're running final stress analysis simulations. Jack offered a small smile. Thank you, Dr. Raghavan. I'm eager to help. The team initiated a series of virtual stress tests projecting heat maps onto the chassis model to highlight areas of potential weakness under high torque and impact loads. Red zones flickered at key junctions. Green and blue spread where the design held firm. Jack studied the display, unsettled by a flicker of crimson at a lower suspension mount. Everyone see that, he asked, pointing to the flicker. That joint right there, it's showing stress concentration above 95% threshold under rapid load changes. He leaned in, tracing the simulated forces along the suspension arm. If the chassis flexes that much during cornering, it could fracture over time. Dr. Raghavan frowned, pulling up the simulation controls. That's unexpected. We ran several iterations and didn't get that level of stress. Are you sure it's not a glitch? Jack crouched beside her console, his eyes narrowing. Not a glitch. It's real. I've seen the same kind of failure in older vehicles when welds aren't reinforced properly. The engine shockwave travels through the frame and concentrates here. These engineers probably assumed the new composite alloys would absorb it, but they still need auxiliary bracing. He tapped at the touchscreen, overlaying a virtual brace he sketched earlier in his notebook. The chassis model updated, and the next simulation run showed a smooth gradient, no alarming hotspots. A murmur rose among the engineers. Colonel Freeman's jaw tightened in approval. Dr. Raghavan's eyes widened as she studied the reinforced design. This is brilliant, Mr. Miller. You've essentially added what our CAD algorithms missed, a torsional support beam angled to distribute dynamic loads across the frame. Jack nodded thoughtfully. Exactly. You've got high-strength composites, but steel reinforcement in key areas can prevent catastrophic failures. It's a small tweak that could save millions in recalls and avoid any risk of chassis fatigue. The head of R&D, Victor Delgado, stepped forward, arms folded. So you're saying our flagship model is fundamentally flawed without this support? Jack met Delgado's gaze evenly. Under extreme conditions, yes. It might hold up under routine tests, but in real-world driving, hard braking into a turn followed by rapid acceleration, you'll see cracks develop over time. I'd rather catch it now than after rollout. Silence settled over the lab as the senior staff absorbed his words. Delgado exhaled slowly. Mr. Miller, your practical insight is invaluable. We'll integrate your reinforcement design immediately and run a full battery of tests. Relief washed over Jack, but he kept his posture relaxed. Glad to help. I just want these cars to be safe. Dr. Raghavan tapped on her tablet. Let's run the full suite: crash simulations, fatigue tests, even heat resilience. If Jack's right, we should see a marked improvement across all criteria. The engineers dispersed to workstations, rerunning stress analyses and overlaying new data. Jack watched the temperature gradients flatten, the stress zones shrink, and the chassis silhouette grow steadier under simulated abuse. A cheer rose when the final test concluded, 0 failure indicators. Colonel Freeman clapped Jack on the shoulder. You just saved us a potential launch disaster, maybe more. The board will want to know about this. Jack felt a surge of pride. In that moment, beyond the diesel fumes of his old repair shop in Crescent Bay, he realized that integrity and practical know-how could hold their own in the highest echelons of industry. He looked back at Emily, who had sneaked into the glass-walled lab just long enough to peek through the door, her green eyes shining with admiration. She gave him a thumbs up before slipping away with Mara's help. Dr. Raghavan approached Jack again, her tone warmer now. Mr. Miller, I have to admit I had my doubts when you first arrived in your, work boots, but your hands-on expertise is exactly what we needed. You've earned my respect and a permanent place on our design review panel if you'd accept. Jack scratched the back of his head, grinning. I'd be honored. Just point me to the next project. Victor Delgado nodded. We'll make sure it's a two-way street. We teach you our tools. You teach us what the real world demands. Jack felt a true sense of belonging for the first time since his wife's passing. Here in this high-tech lab, he was more than the single dad from a sleepy coastal town. He was a trusted partner shaping the future of automotive safety. As he walked out of the lab, shoulder to shoulder with Colonel Freeman, and Dr. Raghavan, Jack glanced back at the prototype chassis. The gleaming frame now carried more than just steel and composite. It carried the weight of his dedication, his integrity, and the unspoken promise that every life counts, whether it's the CEO's daughter or the family in a small seaside community. And in the hushed corridors beyond, executives would whisper of the grease-stained hero whose wisdom saved Hart Industries from its own ambition. Jack Miller stood at the front of the gleaming conference room, a single slide projected behind him, showing a heat map of stress distribution across the revised chassis design. The lights dimmed as he clicked to the next image, the virtual prototype with his reinforcing beam firmly in place. The room was silent save for the soft hum of the air conditioning and the faint tapping of fingers on touchscreens. He took a slow breath, feeling every set of eyes upon him. The engineers who had initially doubted him, the board members in expensive suits, and most important, Isabella Hart herself, whose daughter's safety still lay at the heart of this entire undertaking. "Ladies and gentlemen," Jack began, his voice steady, despite the knot in his stomach. "What you're looking at is the final stress test after implementing the reinforcement I proposed in our last session. As you can see, the red hotspots have disappeared entirely, replaced by a uniform gradient that never exceeds 75% of the material's fatigue limit. That margin of safety means we can proceed with confidence, no risk of chassis failure under normal or even extreme conditions." He let his words sink in and clicked to the concluding slide, a side-by-side comparison of crash simulations with and without his modification. The original design buckled sharply under impact, whereas the reinforced frame absorbed and redistributed the force evenly, showing minimal deformation. Jack paused there, letting the contrast speak for itself. Murmurs ran through the audience. A senior engineer to his right leaned over and whispered something to his neighbor, who nodded with growing respect. Jack swallowed his nerves and looked directly at the board table where stern faces had so recently doubted him. He saw Marjorie Caldwell, once dismissive, lean forward, her lips parting in surprise. To his left, Victor Delgado's expression shifted from skepticism to reluctant admiration. Isabella watched him intently, her eyes shimmering with pride. She caught his gaze and offered a small, encouraging nod. That was all the affirmation Jack needed. He closed the presentation with a simple "thank you" and stepped away from the podium. A heartbeat later, the first applause echoed through the chamber, tentative at first, but growing in volume and confidence. It swelled into a standing ovation. Jack felt a rush of relief and humility, as men and women he'd never thought would clap for him now rose to their feet, offering him respect he'd never sought but deeply appreciated. Isabella stood as well. She crossed the room gracefully, her presence commanding attention even in this sea of executives. When she reached Jack, she extended her hand, not to shake, but to take his in a firm, grateful grasp. "You exceeded every expectation," she said, her voice warm but carrying the hall's hush. "You didn't just fix our design, you saved us from a potential disaster. Hart Industries owes you more than I can express." Jack managed a grin. "I just did what anyone would do for family," he replied, thinking of Lucas and the little girl who had started this journey. "I'm glad it worked." Marjorie Caldwell, now visibly moved, stepped forward. "Mr. Miller, on behalf of the board, I'd like to formally invite you to join our Technical Advisory Council. We need more of that hands-on expertise, that real-world perspective." Jack looked to Isabella, who nodded. He took a breath. "I'd be honored," he said, and the applause, renewed stronger this time, mingled with genuine cheering. Lucas, tucked at the back of the room in Isabella's arms, beamed. His 8-year-old face shone with pride, proof that Jack's greatest victory was the trust and admiration of his son, and now an entire corporation. As the crowd began to disperse, engineers gathered around to shake Jack's hand, ask follow-up questions, and even suggest new projects where his practical skills could make a difference. Isabella leaned in, her tone low but enthusiastic. "After everything we've been through, I can't imagine Hart Industries without you on our team." Jack nodded, emotion thick in his throat. "I never expected any of this when I pulled over that night," he admitted quietly. "I was just trying to help a scared kid." She smiled, reaching for his arm. "That act of kindness changed all our lives, including mine." "You're more than a hired expert, Jack. You're family." Later, as staff members cleared the room, Jack slipped away with Isabella and Lucas to a quiet corner. He knelt so he could be eye-level with his son. "Hey, champ," he said softly, ruffling Lucas's hair. "You proud of your old man?" Lucas nodded vigorously. "You're the best dad and hero ever," he exclaimed, hugging Jack's neck. Jack laughed, hugging him back. In that embrace, he felt the enormity of what had happened. His life, once defined by grease and small-town worries, had expanded into something he'd never imagined: a guardian, not just for his son, but for a child whose very existence carried the weight of a corporate empire. Isabella watched them, a gentle smile on her lips. "You did more than save a car," she murmured to Jack. "You saved a life, and in doing so, you saved our family." Jack met her gaze, gratitude and determination shining in his eyes. "We'll keep doing it," he promised, "together." And in the renewed energy of Hart Industries corridors, where once whispers of doubt had drifted, there was now a new reverence for the man who taught them that integrity, compassion, and hands-on expertise were the greatest assets any empire could possess. Isabella Hart stood in the hushed corridor outside her Uncle Victor Hart's expansive corner office, clutching a slim folder filled with irrefutable evidence of his betrayal. The polished marble underfoot reflected the water-stained portraits lining the walls, images of Hart Industries' founders, her true family lineage. But Victor had twisted that legacy into a weapon, turning shareholder scheming into a kidnapping plot that nearly cost his own niece her life. No more. She paused at his door, took a steadying breath, and stepped in. Victor Hart rose from behind his gleaming mahogany desk, his tailored suit immaculate, his smile camouflaging the ruthlessness beneath. The late afternoon sun slanted through floor-to-ceiling windows, lighting motes of dust in the expansive office. Jack Miller and Lucas lingered by the window, a silent guard, and a proud young witness to this reckoning. Uncle Victor, Isabella began, her voice calm but resolute. "We need to talk." Victor's expression flickered as though he hadn't expected his favorite niece to confront him, and certainly not here in his sanctum. "Isabella," he said smoothly, gesturing to a high-backed leather chair. "To what do I owe this pleasure? I hope it isn't another of your family dramas spilling into my domain." She ignored the jab and set the folder on his desk. "Spare me the patronizing tone. We have proof you orchestrated Emily's abduction," she said, sliding the folder toward him. Victor's predatory grin faded as he picked up the first-sheet email exchanges between him and the shadowy operative who'd pounded on Jack's gas station door, plus bank transfers to a shell company tied to his private investigator. He flicked through the pages, brow furrowing. "Where did you get this?" he demanded, but his voice lacked conviction. She stood elbows braced on the desk. "Claire uncovered it in your encrypted archives. You underestimated me and my daughter's loyalty." She motioned to Lucas, who patted Emily's hand in quiet solidarity. Victor's shoulders sagged for an instant before he squared himself. "You have no idea what you're meddling in," he snarled. "Oh, I know exactly what I'm exposing," Isabella shot back. "Your plan was to force me into handing over control of Hart Industries by threatening Emily's safety. You counted on my maternal instinct to override my corporate responsibilities. But you forgot one thing: a mother's love is stronger than any boardroom threat." He laughed, a sharp, humorless sound. "Do you really think you can defy me? I'm the chairman of this empire. I control half the board, the investors, the media narratives. I could ruin you with a single press release." She leveled her gaze, voice barely above a whisper, yet more powerful than any gunshot. "You already tried to ruin me by sending those goons to my doorstep. But you lost control the moment a stranger, Jack Miller, rescued my daughter instead. Your empire is built on manufactured loyalty and fear. Now that the truth is out, those you think you command will turn on you." Victor's jaw clenched visibly. He tipped his head back, regarding the high ceiling as though seeking escape. He closed his eyes. When he spoke again, his voice was subdued. "What do you want from me?" Isabella let the question hang, then answered with precision. "First, you resign your position, effective immediately. Second, you transfer your voting shares to the charitable trust we discussed, ensuring Hart Industries focuses on innovation and ethical growth, not power plays. Third, you apologize to the people you endangered." Victor opened his eyes, looking every bit the wounded lion. "You're demanding I dismantle everything I've worked for. I'm demanding you do the right thing," she said, "or I hand this dossier to regulatory authorities and the press. That's not a threat, it's a promise." He stared at her with calculating eyes, measuring her resolve. Outside Jack's silhouette moved a silent reminder that violence wouldn't save him now. Lucas peered from behind his father, youthful hope shining in his eyes, and Emily's small hand gripped Isabella's in quiet support. At last, Victor exhaled, lower lip trembling. "You're relentless," he muttered. Then softer, as if admitting something he'd never allowed himself to acknowledge, "I didn't count on you being strong enough to fight me on this level." Isabella's heart stuttered at the rare admission. "I'm your niece," she replied. "You taught me that strength is the only currency that matters when everything else fails." Victor straightened, looking every inch the corporate titan she'd always known, but now stripped of his facade. He reached into his jacket pocket and withdrew a signed resignation letter, sliding it across the desk. Her pulse pounded as she picked it up. Proof that even the most ruthless puppeteer could be forced to cut the strings. He leaned in, voice quieter now, tinged with something like regret. "I'll do it," he said. "But know this, you've alienated half the board. You'll need allies to rebuild from this chaos." Isabella nodded, closing the folder. "I have them," she said, eyes flicking to Jack and Lucas. "I have family." Victor sank back into his chair, shoulders slumping. Then, "Take that power, Isabella. Prove me wrong." She tucked the resignation letter into her portfolio. "I intend to. And I'll start by ensuring my daughter's safety, something you should have prioritized from the beginning." Victor gave a weary nod. "For Emily's sake, thank you." Isabella turned and walked toward the door without another word, Jack and Lucas following. As they left, Victor called after her softer. "Be careful, Isabella." She paused in the hallway and glanced back. "Always," she said, and stepped into the bright corridor, leaving her uncle to contemplate the downfall of his schemes. Outside the skyscraper, the wind carried no threat, only the promise of fresh beginnings. Isabella took a deep breath of the evening air, Jack's steady presence at her side, Lucas clutching Emily's hand. Together they had faced shadows, both literal and figurative, and emerged victorious. Isabella looked down at Emily and Lucas. Ready to go home, Lucas beamed. Emily nodded with a shy smile. Jack opened his arms, and the three children ran into his embrace. As they walked toward the parking garage, Isabella felt the weight of her inheritance shift, from a legacy of betrayal to a future built on trust, courage, and the unbreakable bond of family. Jack Miller wiped grease from his hands and took a deep breath, savoring the familiar hum of his garage in Crescent Bay. The salty afternoon breeze drifted in through the open door, carrying the tang of engine oil and the laughter of two children working side by side. In the center of the shop sat a battered 1967 Ford Mustang, its faded teal paint promising stories of long-ago road trips and midnight rides. And now it was the canvas on which a new family portrait was being painted, one of unity, resilience, and second chances. "Okay, Lucas?" Isabella called from the other side of the car, her voice light and encouraging. "Hold that bolt steady." She knelt beside her daughter Emily, whose small hands gripped a socket wrench with wide-eyed concentration. Lucas mirrored Emily's posture on the opposite side of the engine, offering supportive, if sometimes shaky, assistance. Jack leaned against a tool chest, arms crossed, watching the scene with a proud, almost awestruck smile. Emily's brow furrowed as she loosened a stubborn bolt. "It's so hard, Mommy. I'm trying." She glanced up at Isabella, cheeks puffed with effort. Isabella smiled and placed an encouraging hand on Emily's shoulder. "That's it, sweetheart. Remember what I said, steady pressure, then a firm twist. You've got this." She guided Emily's small movements, her once cutthroat corporate composure softened into maternal patience. Behind them, Lucas jabbed at a ratchet, trying to catch up. "I can help too, right?" he asked, voice full of hope. Isabella turned and ruffled Lucas's hair. "Of course you can, buddy. Why don't you hand Emily that spare bolt next?" Lucas beamed and scurried to retrieve the part. Jack cleared his throat and stepped forward. He offered a rag to Emily. "Here, wipe your hands when you're done." "You're doing great." His voice carried the steady warmth of late-night shifts at the gas station and early morning school runs. Without warning, Emily's bolt came free with a decisive snap. She looked up, eyes shining. I did it, Daddy." She held her hands aloft, the wrench trembling in triumph. Lucas let out a whoop. "Nice work, Em." He high-fived his sister, then spun to Jack for his own celebratory hug. Jack swept both children into a bear hug, laughter booming off the walls. Isabella watched with misty eyes the last echoes of corporate battles distant beneath the chorus of his joy. She set aside the socket wrench, rose to her feet, and joined the embrace, forming a circle of arms and laughter around the Mustang. When they finally broke apart, Isabella glanced at Jack with gratitude flickering in her gaze. "Thank you for this," she said softly. "For giving us a home." Jack shrugged, leaning against the car's gleaming chrome bumper. "You two bring more adventure than I ever bargained for," he teased, nodding at Emily and Lucas. "But I wouldn't have it any other way." Lucas climbed onto the Mustang's hood, dangling his legs. "Can we paint it next?" he asked eagerly. "Make it red and white with racing stripes." Isabella exchanged a look with Jack. He laughed and shrugged. "Why not? It'll be a classic in no time." "Deal." Emily chimed in, hopping onto the adjacent fender. Already she was dreaming of future rides with her new family, coastal drives, picnics by the pier, and endless afternoons beneath the California sun. As Jack retrieved a can of primer and a brush, Isabella called out, "Hey, I've been thinking." She paused, folding her arms. "I want to set up a trust for Lucas and Emily to make sure they're safe no matter what happens. No more kidnappings, no more corporate espionage." Jack paused with the brush in hand. He turned to her, brow raised. "You really think we need that?" She offered him a gentle smile. "You taught me that safety isn't something you can take for granted, and you've given my daughter and me a new life here. I want to make sure it lasts." Jack's expression softened. He nodded and set the brush aside. "All right, let's do it together." Isabella stepped closer, resting a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "I'd like that." They stood side by side, watching their children plot the Mustang's transformation with youthful zeal. In that moment, every fear that had chased them, the black SUVs, the shadowy boardroom betrayals, the midnight chases, felt miles away, lost among the scattered wrenches and splashes of paint. The afternoon waned into evening as they worked. Jack guided Lucas and Emily in mixing red and white paint to the perfect racing stripe hue, while Isabella laid out plans for the foundation legal papers accounts and protective measures drafted by her most trusted team. She looked up every now and then to catch Jack's eye, sharing small nods that said, "We've come so far." By the time the sun dipped below the horizon, the Mustang gleamed, a reborn chariot bearing the scratch and dent marks that told its story. Under the vivid stripes, it was more than a car. It was a symbol of hope, unity, and the unbreakable bond of their newly forged family. They wiped their hands and covered the car for the night. Lucas yawned and stretched, rubbing sleepy eyes. "Can we ride tomorrow, Dad?" Jack scooped Lucas into his arms and handed Emily to Isabella. "Tomorrow," he promised. And every day after that. Hand in hand, they closed up the garage. The echo of their footsteps faded into the twilight air, but the warmth of their unity lingered, an unspoken vow that no storm, no boardroom betrayal, no shadowy conspiracy would ever tear them apart again. That night, the coastal breeze whispered through Crescent Bay, carrying the promise of brighter days and the reassuring hum of engines, both old and new, ready to carry this family toward a future built on trust, resilience, and the simple act of kindness that had changed everything. The morning sun peeked tentatively over the distant hills of Crescent Bay, melting the last drifts of winter's snow and casting a golden glow across Jack Miller's driveway. There, where only months before Jack had closed up shop each night in solitary routine, a bright new sign now swung gently in the breeze: Miller and Hart Auto. Beneath it, Lucas and Emily stood side by side, their breath misting in the crisp air as they watched Isabella Hart step forward to unlock the double doors of their shared dream. Jack stepped up beside them, his winter coat dusted with slush, and glanced at the transformed garage. No longer a humble one-bay gas station workshop, it was now a clean, expansive space with 3 service lifts, a sleek waiting area furnished with comfortable chairs, and a wall of windows that let in the warm morning light. Isabella's vision and her resources had turned his small dream into something far bigger than he'd ever dared imagine. "Ready?" Jack asked, his voice a mix of nerves and excitement. "Absolutely," Isabella replied, offering him a reassuring smile. She patted Emily's head, smoothing back her daughter's damp curls. "Let's do this for us, and for everyone who deserves a second chance." Lucas, stirring with anticipation, tugged at Jack's sleeve. "Dad, can I push the button?" he asked, pointing at the big red switch that would activate the garage's new lighting system for the first time. Jack looked over at Isabella, whose eyes glistened with pride. "Go on, champ." Lucas took a deep breath, placed his small hand on the switch, and flipped it upward. In an instant, dozens of bright LED lights hummed to life, illuminating the showroom-like floor and revealing the crisp logo emblazoned on the service bays. The interior gleamed with possibility. A group of neighbors' friends who had watched Jack's solitary struggle stood beyond the garage doors waiting to cheer. Among them were old customers from the gas station, curious local business owners, and the sheriff tipping his hat from the sidewalk. As Lucas released the switch, the crowd erupted in applause and cheering. Jack stepped forward. "Welcome everyone to the grand opening of Miller and Hart Auto," he said, his voice carrying both gratitude and humility. This place isn't just about fixing cars, it's about building dreams, offering second chances and supporting one another no matter where we come from. And I couldn't have done it without these incredible partners. He nodded to Isabella, who stood beside him, her arm around Emily's shoulders. Isabella raised a hand to quiet the gathering. Thank you all for being here, she began, her tone warm and genuine. When Jack first told me about his dream, I saw not just a garage, but a community in need of a place where people could find more than just repairs, they could find hope. My daughter and I are honored to stand with Jack Lucas and all of you as we embark on this new journey together. A soft wind carried the scent of brewing coffee from the waiting area as Isabella's assistant began serving hot drinks. Plates of homemade cinnamon rolls, Jack's personal favorite, were passed around. Emily distributed colorfully printed business cards featuring the new logo, her small hand shaking slightly with excitement. Lucas introduced himself to curious guests, rattling off details of the Mustang project they had completed together. After a few moments of mingling, Isabella pulled Jack aside. "Look at them," she whispered, indicating Lucas and Emily, laughing as they showed a retired mechanic how to operate the new diagnostic scanner. "They believe in this place as much as we do." Jack watched the children, his chest swelling with pride and affection. "They remind me why I started this in the first place," he replied softly. "For Lucas. And now for Emily, too." He placed a hand over his heart, where a family photo of the four of them, taken just weeks earlier in the garage, stood in a silver frame. Isabella squeezed Jack's arm and handed him a glass of champagne from a passing server. "To family," she said, and he clinked his glass gently against hers. As the morning wore on, the first customers rolled in, a young couple with a sputtering sedan, a retired schoolteacher whose classic pickup needed a tune-up, and a local delivery driver eager for a quick safety check. Jack and Isabella moved seamlessly among them, Jack greeting each driver with down-home sincerity, and Isabella offering corporate-grade efficiency and behind-the-scenes support. Lucas shadowed Jack at every turn, handing him tools, while Emily followed Isabella's calm instructions as she checked tire pressures and brake lights. When the retired schoolteacher, Mrs. Alvarez, stepped out of her pickup, she shook Jack's hand enthusiastically. "This place has heart, son," she said. "Thank you for caring." Jack glanced back at Lucas, who beamed with pride, then turned to thank Mrs. Alvarez, eyes misty. By midday, the garage floor was alive with hums of activity lifts rising and falling, mechanics greeting each other by name, and the gentle whir of tools everywhere. Isabella moved behind a desk in the office section, organizing schedules, approving orders, and speaking softly with suppliers. The partnership was unfolding perfectly, Jack's mechanical expertise and community roots complemented by Isabella's financial know-how and industry connections. In the quiet lull of the afternoon, Jack found a moment to step outside. The driveway, once slippery with melting ice, was now clear, the morning snow melt gathering in puddles that reflected the bright sign overhead. He took in a deep breath, tasting the salt from the nearby ocean. This place was more than a business. It was a symbol of transformation born from a single act of kindness on a stormy night, blossoming into something that would outlive them all. Isabella joined him, carrying Emily, who was half asleep, against her shoulder. Lucas trailed behind, yawning and rubbing his eyes. Jack knelt to greet Lucas. "Rough day, buddy?" he asked. Lucas nodded, then flopped into Jack's arms. "I love it here." Jack set him down gently and looked up at Isabella. "Thank you," he said quietly. "For everything." Isabella brushed a lock of hair from Emily's forehead. "Thank you for believing in me and in us." They shared a smile as Emily stirred in her mother's arms, blinking up at them with sleepy green eyes. Isabella kissed Emily's forehead and stood next to Jack, resting her hand on his shoulder. Together they watched the children, the customers, the freshly painted bays housing a future they had rebuilt, one bolt at a time, one act of kindness at a time. Before heading inside, Jack picked up a handful of melting snow from the driveway and let it fall through his fingers. "A brighter tomorrow," he murmured, echoing the unspoken promise between them. Isabella nodded. "A brighter tomorrow." Inside, the laughter mingled with the hum of the engines. The clients who once sneered at corporate types and the corporate titans who once scoffed at grease-stained jeans had found common ground. Caught between the scent of fresh paint and warm coffee, Jack and Isabella, once strangers bound by fate, now helmed a small empire of trust and compassion. As the sun dipped toward the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, The last customer drove off into the evening headlights fading down the road. Jack locked up the front doors, and Isabella hit the final switch, dimming the lights. Lucas and Emily, finally exhausted, leaned against their parents as they walked home, a family unbreakable, forged in storm, and sealed by hope. Tomorrow the alarms would sound again. The doors would open, and the engines would hum. But tonight, beneath the last glow of the Miller and Hart auto sign, Jack placed an arm around Isabella's waist and whispered, "We did it." She rested her head on his shoulder and replied, her voice soft with wonder, "We did."